Hello and welcome to the video. This is going to be the final part of my 2024 Arnold Strongman Classic predictions, where we're going to be going over the top four placing athletes for this competition. I thought this would be the best format and way to do this final video, just due to the fact that I honestly believe that any of these top four guys that I have here are capable of winning this competition. And I really believe that the victor here is definitely going to be one of these four guys. Um, Also to note, this video is going to be recorded about a month after my last video, just so we can sort of get the most updated predictions as possible, taking into account certain revelations from certain athletes' training videos and things such as that. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into it by revealing the points here for our fourth place athlete. So we see here that this athlete is taking a first place on the deadlift, scoring decent points on the frame carry, the Denny's, losing out some points on the Apollon's wheels, and finishing off pretty decently with a fourth place finish in the Stone Medley. And that athlete is none other than Hafthor Julius Bjornsson. Now moving on to our third athlete here, we see that they're extremely consistent across the board, scoring 8 points or more on every single event here. And if you recognize this pattern here, getting third/fourth place on all of these events and finishing strong, then you would know that this athlete is none other than Martins Licis. Moving on to our second place athlete here, we see that they get a third place finish here on the deadlift. Uh, Decent score here on the frame. Could be better potentially, but I'll get into that later on. A first place finish in the Dinnies, a tied first place with Tom Stoltman on the Apollon's wheels, and a decent placing here on the Stone Medley, scoring 43.5 points. I have Mitchell Hooper in second place. Now, revealing here our first place athlete's points. First thing to note is that this athlete has as well 43.5 points here. So again, I can honestly see any of these top four guys coming in first place here. Um, and even if you look closer, we have first place with 43.5, second place with 43.5, third place with 42.5. So I really think it's going to be extremely close with these top three guys. And then with Hafthor being a bit of a wild card, he could honestly come in on that day and just completely dominate everything. But again, I'll get into that a little bit later. So anyways, our first place athlete here is coming in with a rather low score here on the deadlift. If you actually compare it to these to the second through fourth placing athletes. Only 4 points here on the deadlift. If you look at all of their points here, nobody here is getting 4 points. So for the first place guy to be getting 4 points and still possibly winning, I think that's a pretty key indicator, especially if you look at how many points they get in the other events, that this guy is Mateusz Kiliaskowski. Now, full disclosure here, I may be a little bit biased towards Mateus. He may or may not be my favorite athlete here, but I still believe that I tried to determine these points as objectively as possible. And actually, up until this morning, before I started recording this, I had Mateus in third place, but just due to some recent revelations, some recent talk in the community that his Denny Stone training has been looking great and things such as that, it sort of bumped him up a couple places into being tied at least on points for first place with Mitchell Hooper, and winning certainly on off of countback. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get a bit more in depth here, just going athlete by athlete. So starting off here with Hafthor. So we see Hafthor here taking first place on the deadlift. Obviously, if you have been keeping up with his training videos, he has pulled 1,000 pounds already on a bar that is meant to simulate the elephant bar. By far the heaviest lift out of any athlete, at least that they have posted so far. So realistically, I don't really see anybody even having a chance at beating Thor here if he performs how he's supposed to. He honestly, looking at that 1,000 pound video, it did not really look like a struggle. Um, it didn't look like he was at his all-time best, but again, he doesn't really need to be. He honestly could have about 20 kilograms higher than that on the day. Not that he would need it, but I do think that he is capable of breaking the elephant bar record. But I do think that he can win this event with maybe a 460 kilogram pull, which is about 1,015 pounds, or maybe a 465, 1,025 about there pounds. Um, so I think that a win for Hafthor on the deadlift is a pretty safe bet here, if I were a betting man. Anyways, moving on to the frame carry. I have him here with 7 points. So what that basically means is that he gets beat out here by Mateos, Martins, Evan, and Maxime. Now, if you look at these four guys that are beating him here, Maxime, Evan, and Mateos, I do definitely think that they have higher foot speed than him on this event, and they have the grip to hold on to that frame longer than him. So I think that they're sort of safe bets here to beat him on this event, um, unless, of course, one of them makes a mistake and drops it. Another key thing to look at here is that I have him actually beating Hooper. But again, it's really hard to predict here because Hooper, if he's able to hold on to that frame, he could honestly shoot up in those points. But just looking at the current training that we have, I do think that Hafthor is capable of falling somewhere within 7 points or getting 7 points on the frame. Um, just due to the fact that he looks pretty steady holding on to 400 kilograms. And I do think that he will be capable of finishing that frame carry run. So moving on to the Dinny Stones. I do not believe that Hafthor has put out really any footage of himself training the Dinny Stones, except very recently where he showed some training from a more lighter training session that he was having. He was carrying, I believe, 140 kilograms in one hand and maybe about 100 kilograms in the other, which is 50 kilograms below competition weight. Basing it off of how he looked carrying those stones, he did look pretty stable and he did go for a pretty good distance. So I don't think that he will necessarily be bad at this event. I just think that there will be other people who are capable of performing a little bit better than him here. So I think somewhere around mid-pack is sort of what you can expect for Thor, maybe even better. That's the thing about Thor, you never really know. So moving on to the Apollon's wheels. Um, as we all know, Thor about 9 months ago suffered a pec tear, maybe even 10 months ago. But essentially he suffered a pec tear, which really hindered his pressing training just in general. So he sort of got a bit of a lagged start there in his training. Um, the best training clip that I've seen of him on the Apollon's wheels is lifting 176 kilograms. He cleaned it and he pressed it. However, that is 6 kilograms below competition weight. Now, it didn't look like the most difficult lift in the world. I definitely think that he could have doubled it in that training session. So I do think that that can translate to getting 2 reps on the Apollon's wheel on the day of the competition. Um, but again, even 2 reps, I think, in this competition isn't going to be enough for massive points, but it really depends on how everybody else is performing on that day. But I do think that the top 3 guys that I have above him here are most likely going to be capable of hitting more reps than him on this event, which will really give them an opportunity to get ahead of Thor here in terms of points. So now moving on to the stone medley, I have him here with 8 points, getting beat out by Mateos, Martins, and actually Alexei Novikov. Um, so to really explain this one, it's all really going to come down to who can shoulder that stone. Now, I'm extremely confident that Mateos is going to be able to, shoulder that stone almost with no problem. Sort of the same thing goes for Martins. I think Martins might be able to even get 2 reps on that stone. Still sort of losing out to Mateos, but anyways, that's, for later on in the video. Uh, but again, I do think that Hafthor is capable of placing pretty well in this event, just due to the fact that he has previously been able to shoulder that stone, um, twice actually in 2018 or well, once in 2018 and once in 2019, at the Arnold, of course. So that does give him a bit of an edge on his competition here. But again, I keep repeating that it's extremely hard to know here. Not only due to the fact that we have to see how Thor shows up on that day, because he could very well peak extremely well for this competition and see just a complete boost on all of his events on the actual day. And then there's also the factor of how well the other competitors do, because again, everybody can really be seeing a boost to all of their events here, because everybody seems to be peaking extremely well for this competition. Not to mention the fact that with the events being this heavy and also very oriented on skill, any little mistake here could change these standings by a lot, especially with the caliber of athlete here and the amount of great athletes here too. So essentially, I think that Thor will be sort of placing sort of a bit above mid pack on this event, but I don't think that he's challenging for the first place on this event. He could maybe get top three, but essentially that leaves him here with 37 points. If you look at the overall final points here, I do think that he is sort of safe for that fourth, fifth position. Maybe Tom Stoltman would be able to overtake him here, but for now, I do have Thor ahead of him, mostly due to the fact that he really gains on him on the deadlift. I have him gaining points on him on the frame carry, but again, Tom Stoltman could really come in a fantastic shape and perform even better than, 4 points on this. 4 points is pretty low, especially considering that he's had some pretty good training on the frame. Um, so again, Tom could really outshine, my predictions here. And coming fourth here, maybe bumping Thor down to fifth. But the same could be said about Thor. Again, like I've already said, he could really come in a fantastic shape, even better than we've seen in his training. So just one of those things that's extremely hard to really predict. So if you also look at Thor's point gap between the top three guys, it's actually even bigger than his point gap from Tom Stoltman. As you can see, it's about a gap of 5.5 points here between these top three guys. So what that really says to me is that these top three guys are sort of the safe picks for the podium, unless Thor comes in top shape. But anyways, that's enough talk, I believe, about half Thor. Let's go ahead and move on to Martins Licis. So getting started here with the max deadlift, Martins has had a best training pull of 425 kilograms, which moved pretty solidly. He did say that it didn't have the speed that he wanted, especially if he's aiming somewhere in that 1,000-pound range. But it was a pretty good lift. And again, Martins is one of those guys that peaks extremely well. He did state that it was the heaviest training lift that he's ever done. So, in other words, it was the heaviest deadlift that he's ever done in training, which theoretically should translate to the heaviest pull that he's will ever do in competition, especially considering that he's great at peaking for, competing on that day. So in other words, that's why I have him here in having 8 points here. That's a fourth place finish. I do think that he has the potential to gain anywhere from, 8, 9, or 10 points here on the deadlift. So maybe even getting second to Thor, beating out Hooper and Bobby Thompson. But that's a hard bargain, I guess you could say, because of course, or Bobby Thompson's training has been pretty good, and Hooper is also one of those guys that peaks pretty well. Something else that should be mentioned is that Martins is really gunning for 1,000 pounds on this deadlift. So if he does end up deciding to have his third pull be 1,000 pounds, and then he misses that because, to be honest, I think he could hit 1,000 pounds, but I don't think it will be easy. So if he does go for 1,000 pounds and he does end up missing that, it could really make the decision on where he places. I think if he does hit 1,000 pounds, I think he can place second place in the deadlift. But if he misses it or hits something a bit lower, then he is looking somewhere to get, fourth place on this event, scoring about 8 points. So I think 8 points somewhere around there is pretty a pretty safe bet for Martins here. Anyways, moving on to the frame carry. Again, I have him here in eighth. Sorry, not eighth, with 8 points. Um, so that's a fourth place position here. I do think that Evan, Maxime, and Mateos, they all. So if you look at Mateos, Martins, Maxime, and Evan, these four guys all have the grip to hold on to that frame the entire time. So then it really comes down to who's faster. And if you really look at the scorings these past few years, Mateos, Evan, and Maxime are all extremely fast athletes. Martins is a fast athlete, but I do think that these other three guys beat him out there just on speed. Now, if maybe Evan or Maxime end up dropping that frame, because they have less experience than Martins on this frame, of course, then I do think that Martins will be there to sort of pick up points on that. So again, similar to deadlift, he could end up scoring anywhere from that fourth place position to second place. Um, which again, if you take into account the fact that Martins, at least I have him predicted here to be very close to that first place position, any little mistake from anybody, giving benefit to Martins is going to be extremely dangerous for Hooper and Kiliskowski because if Martins shows up in his typical contest shape, being extremely consistent on all these events, he will be there to capitalize on those lost points, and it could end up being the difference between him coming in third place and first place. So moving on to the Denny Stones, again, I have him here with 8 points, fourth place finish. It just really comes down to, again, I think Hooper honestly has more experience than Martins on these type of stone walks. Who else do I have beating him here? I also think that Evan Singleton, again, I do think that he has more experience here, and his Evan's training has just been looking really great on the Denny Stones. Where if you compare it to Martins, yes, Martins does have again a phenomenal grip. However, if you look at his training, he's sort of been not performing how he would like to. Now, he has said in interviews that if he performs how he believes he is capable on all these events, that he thinks he can win this event. So I do think that Martins definitely has a lot of potential on this event, but just basing it off of training, which is all I can really do, I do think it's sort of a safe spot for Martins here. Again, scoring 8 points at around fourth place here. Um, like I kind of keep saying here, if anybody here slips up, Martinez will be there to capitalize so long as he maintains his consistent performances here. So again, another event here that Martinez could end up taking more points on than I have predicted here. So moving on to the opponent's wheels. Martinez training for this has been, I would say it's gone pretty good. I think he has hit a double, so 2 reps on something close to competition weight. So I do think that he's pretty safe for 2 reps on this axle here. If you look at the scoring here for all the athletes, just to sort of give a little bit more clarification. Um, if you look down here towards Maxime and Oscar, I have them with 1 rep. That gives you 1.5 points. 2 reps gives you 5 points. So everybody here with 5 points, you see, has 2 reps. Um, 3 reps will give you 8.5 points, and 4 reps will give you 10.5 points. Just a bit of a clarification on what all that means. Um, so yeah, again, I have Martins here scoring 8.5 points with 3 reps. Uh, like I said, he has hit 2 reps with close to competition weight in training, but you can kind of tell that he's not really pushing it. He doesn't really want to be pushing it yet, just because he wants to be training a bit smart. But essentially, I do think that he's capable of getting 3 reps on the day. I do think a little bit more than that is a tough ask, but you never really know with Martins. So essentially, we're really just gonna have to wait and see what he does on that day. So I guess the final event here for Martins is the Stone Medley, where I have him scoring 10 points with a second place finish here. Of course, second place to Mateos. Now, sort of on what I was commenting earlier, Martins has done this. Well, Martins and Mateos have both done the previous trial by stone, which included the stone press into a stone load. So, both of them have that experience there over a lot of these other athletes. And again, these two guys are probably the best at shouldering, at least, the Ode Haugen tombstone, getting into their shoulder. With Martins having 2 reps on that stone to the shoulder, whereas most other athletes, or actually, um, whereas the other athletes that have actually been able to shoulder that stone have only been able to do it for 1 rep. Outside of course, Mateus, who's done it for 5 reps, completely outside of the realm of reality for most of these other guys. Um, so with that being said, I do think Martins here is really going to be able to score a second place finish here, just due to the fact that I think he's going to be able to shoulder that stone more than, uh, you know, just about every athlete here outside of Mateus. And that's what I really think this event is going to come down to, just who can shoulder that stone the most. Um, which is really, you know, brings the question as to why do we really have the stone press and the stone load? Because honestly, uh, I think it's just going to come down to that last event, that last part of that medley. But it is what it is. Maybe it'll put on a better show for the crowd, because I believe last 2 years ago they just had the stone to shoulder, and a lot of the athletes they weren't really able to shoulder that stone. Uh, which could have been a bit boring for the crowd. Uh, but anyways, that's besides the point. It is what it is. I still think that the best stone shoulderers, if that's even a word, are going to come out on top on this event. Giving Martins here 42.5 points uh, out of a potential 55 points. And again, with that being said, as I kept saying over and over again for all these events for him, if anybody here really slips, um, or gives him more ground to move upon, he's definitely going to be there to capitalize upon that. So again, Martin Lisi's very much within the realm of possibility that he wins here, uh, even by more than a couple points over my current top 2 predicted athletes here. So anyways, moving on to Mitchell Hooper. I have him here with 9 points on the deadlift, which translates to a third place finish. I see him only being beaten here by Thor and Bobby Thompson. Now, I'm giving him here 9 points to be a bit generous, just due to the fact that, as many people know, he's had a groin injury throughout this prep. So essentially, his best training lifts really have only been uh, a 410 kilogram or approximately 900 pound deadlift from, the actual height, or sorry, from the floor height. And I believe it was on a regular deadlift bar. So that would translate to approximately, again, similar to 900 pounds on the actual elephant bar, because I don't think that it makes that huge of a difference, to be honest, when compared to a simple deadlift bar. Um, he's also hit 440 kilograms, but that was from a 3-inch elevation and on a stiff bar, which I believe is supposed to simulate where the weight leaves the ground on the elephant bar. So, due to that, it's really difficult to gauge how that would actually translate onto the elephant bar. But I do think that he is capable of more than 410 kilograms. Uh, but it's hard to say that he's capable of more than the 440 kilograms that he posted from that 3-inch elevation. Both of those lifts looked, I'd say smooth, but not easy, so I don't know if he has that much more in the tank there. So I do think that he could sort of come in here with maybe a 975 pound pull, somewhere around that range. which I do definitely think puts him in danger of losing out to even Martins and Tom Stoltman here, because I think Martins is definitely capable of hitting maybe actually something similar, 475 uh, to 1,000 pounds. And I think Tom, you never really know with Tom. Tom can just show up. He could show up on that day and pull 1,000 plus, but you never really know with him. So again, I think Hooper is in danger of losing points to Martins and Tom here. So he could end up getting maybe 7 points on this event, but just to be a little bit generous and giving him the benefit of the doubt, I do think that he will be good enough, especially playing a little bit of tactics with the way that the deadlift works in the 3 attempts. I do think that he will be capable of getting 9 points. Again, keyword being capable of getting 9 points here. Um, Potentially, best case scenario, 10 points. If again he plays a bit of tactics here with Bobby, but you do have to mention that they do have the same coach, so uh, it's gonna kind of be hard to beat Bobby Thompson out based off of tactics. You really have Mitchell Hooper would really have to beat Bobby here on pure strength. And just based off training, I don't believe that Hooper right now has a stronger deadlift than Bobby Thompson. So again, that's kind of why I have him there in ninth, or sorry, with 9 points. But anyways, moving on to the frame carry. Now, last year, I believe Hooper came in third place on the frame. This year, I have him in what I believe is, I think that translates to like sixth place. Now, as I was kind of talking or mentioning throughout the rest of the video, this could be a much higher placing here. Maybe even just due to the talk that he's been kind of spewing out there. It could even be a first place finish if he's able to fully hold on to that frame the entire run and maintain that foot speed. He claims that last year, or yeah, it was last year, he claims that he was on pace for the world record, potentially beating out, Mateos's world record here. But that comes with the caveat that he's able to hold on to the frame because last year he, of course, dropped it, and that he's able to still maintain that foot speed. So essentially, I have him here in with 6 points, assuming that he does end up dropping that frame. Uh, just due to the fact that you haven't really seen much training footage of him, carrying 400 kilograms with his grip. So it's hard to really justify placing him above some of these other guys who I do think will be able to finish this in one run without dropping it. For example, Mateus, Evan, who else? Maxime, Martins, and I also believe Thor are capable of finishing this in one go, which will definitely be faster than dropping the frame and picking it up and then finishing. Um, Again, I do think that Hooper is capable of finishing it, and I think he will finish it. I just think that if he's not able to hold on to it the whole time, that is going to cost massive points to Mateos here. And actually, if you look at it, I just realized he drops 5 points to Mateos here, where Mateos would drop 5 points to him on the deadlift. So these first two events, I'm kind of predicting to be sort of an equalizer between Hooper and Kiliskowski here, which will definitely be interesting if it does play out that way. But again, these predictions are basically useless with the way that this competition is so competitive. It's almost impossible to accurately predict. So this is just kind of uh, what I'm going off of by intuition and the training footage that is currently out there. So anyways, enough talk about that. I think the point has kind of been made there that Hooper can perform better than that. But just based off of training and the evidence, I do think that he's in danger of losing a lot of points in that event if he isn't able to grip that frame. So moving on to the Dinnies, I have him here in first place with 11 points. I do think Hooper is the standout in this field for this event. Uh, I do think he not necessarily has the most experience on these kind of stones, but has had the most consistent and best performances on these stones. Uh, Not necessarily the Denny stones, but these sort of ringed walking stones. Um, Again, a lot of people know that he's great at the nickel stones, which are similar stones. They're a bit lighter, but they have similar. They function similarly. That they're ringed stone walks, and he's great at that. So it showed that he's great at hook grip. He's great at blocking out the pain, at least temporarily until the event is over. He does say that he really hates this event, but I don't think that that's going to play a factor into his performance because I'm sure that he cares much more about scoring points here than how much it hurts his fingers. But that's aside from the point. Um, so essentially, I do think that he has all of the capability within him to win this event, and I think he should be winning this event unless some other athlete comes out and just puts on like some kind of all-star performance. Um, I guess the only people I can really see potentially beating him here are Evan, because again, he's also just about as good as Hooper on this kind of event. Um, and also Mateus, just due to the fact that it's been recently revealed that he has similar training equipment to these stones, so it can be argued that having that specificity is going to really help him out here and boost him up in the points. Uh, as well as the fact that it's also been said that his training for this event has been going very well. There's just been some sort of talks about that. So it really is just gonna remain to be seen how he ends up doing here. Um, so yeah, essentially, I think Cooper is most likely to win this event, but I do think that somebody like Evan, maybe Mateus, can end up winning it as well. So moving on to the Apollon's wheels. I have Hooper here sharing a tied victory with Tom Stoltman. Hooper's training for this event has been pretty good. He's been able to really efficiently clean that axle with competition weight and even heavier than competition weight at times. He's also been adopting a split jerk technique. So I really don't think the press is going to be an issue for him at all. He's been really focusing on the press. Um, I know he recently did a 212 kilogram axle press, but that was from the rack. He didn't clean that, of course. So his press is basically going to be 100% fine. So if he can clean it, I do think that he will press it. Now, although his axle clean has been pretty efficient, I do think that at least I predict that he will cap out at about 4 reps. It also should be mentioned that a lot of his training has been on a axle that has not been fixed. Some of it has been on an axle that was fixed, and it did still look pretty efficient. So I do think that on that competition day, he's not going to be that affected. Definitely think at least 3 reps is good for him here. But I do think that he's going to be able to get 4 reps just due to the fact that, we've seen him time and time and again be able to sort of put in these great performances. So moving on to the stone medley, I have him here with 7 points, which translates to a fifth place position here. I see him getting beat out by maybe Thor, Martins, Mateos, and even Alexi. Now, that's due to the fact that those 4 guys that I just mentioned have all been able to shoulder that stone. Um, so it remains to be seen if Hooper will be able to shoulder that stone, as it is a pretty legendary accomplishment. Um, I do think that he is capable of shouldering that stone actually, um, depending on if his groin injury is going to hamper him here, although he says that it's improving. Um, but I do th have him in seventh here just because, as a matter of likelihood, that's just kind of how I decided to rank everybody for some of these events. So just as a matter of likelihood, I see the top 4 guys in this event with more chances of shouldering that stone than Hooper. Now, if Hooper is able to shoulder that stone, maybe it is in a time that is less than, the top 4 guys that I have for this event here. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to be scored, but just due to lack of information on this event, that's how I decided to sort of rank it here myself. Um, so again, even if Hooper isn't able to shoulder that stone, I do see him being pretty fast on those first two implements, the stone press and the stone load. Um, so he could end up scoring a lot of points just based off of his speed. Again, it's pretty hard to say how they're going to score this event. I do think that time will be a factor, because if you look back to this trial by Stone in 2020, uh, it was sort of based off of time, uh, and how fast you were able to complete each implement. So basically, that leaves him off here with 43.5 points. Tied in my predictions on points to Mateus. However, losing out on countback because if you see here, we have Mateus with two flat out event wins, according to my predictions, of course, as compared to Hooper's one event win and one tied event win. So I do believe that that does play a factor to countback. A tied event win is surpassed by, a single person event win. So I do believe that is how countback would work. Either way, they would then, even if it was tied, we have Hooper here with a third place, Mateus with a third place, Mateus with a tied for second place, actually. Um, Whereas Hooper does not have any tied second places. So that is tied for second, I believe, right? Or technically tied for third, which either way would still supersede Hooper's other two positions or points here. So if it does come down to that, Mateus would win on countback, um, at least in this scenario that I have presented here. So anyways, finally moving on to who I have in first place here. Again, as I sort of mentioned at the beginning of the video, I am definitely a Mateus fan, but just this morning when I was making the final touches to this spreadsheet, I did have Mateus in third place. Um, just sort of the recent revelations on his Dinny Stones, at least the talk around his Dinny Stones just sort of prompted me to sort of bump him up by 2 points uh, on the Dinny Stones. I had him in fifth. Now I have him in third, with potential to even do better. Um, let's see, I also made a change for his Apollon's wheels, I believe, because I think I had another athlete sort of tied with 3 reps on the Apollon's wheels, but now it's only him and and Martins tied with 3 reps on the Apollon's wheels, which I believe just bumped him up ever so slightly. So just those little slight changes sort of inclined me to have Mateus a little bit higher in the rankings, sort of fighting for that first place. I definitely think he's capable of it and would love for him to be able to finally accomplish that. Um, you know, not 10 years after his first Arnold Strongman Classic, but it would actually be 10 years after his victory at the Arnold Amateur, sort of at the start of his career. It'd be a fantastic story. But anyways, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So for max deadlift, we have him here with 4 points. That sort of translates to eighth place, I believe, on the deadlift. So essentially, if you look at it, we have him beating actually the bottom three guys here. We have him beating Maxime. I think that's a pretty safe bet. Mateus has pulled 380 kilograms in training, and I believe it was actually on a stiff bar, too, or at least it looked like a stiff bar. So I definitely think Mateus is capable of 400 kilograms on that day, maybe even slightly more if he feels like it or if he has to go for that. I definitely think he can. Maybe 405 kilograms, maybe 410 kilograms on a good day. Uh, but essentially, I do think it's a safe bet that he beats Maxime here. I do think it's a safe bet that he beats Oscar here. Oscar's just recently posted a personal best of 370 kilograms on I think it was a deadlift bar. And it looked not easy. So I don't think Oscar has much more than 370 kilograms in him on the day. Uh, or at least on that training session. Maybe on the day, maybe he has 10 kilograms more with the elephant bar, etc. But I don't think he's challenging to beat Mateus here. And then Thomas Evans, he pulled somewhere around 860 pounds last year, I believe. Uh, so again, maybe he would be in contention there to beat Mateus on this event. But I think just based off of experience, I think Mateus can and will beat Thomas Evans on this deadlift. So moving on, the next event is the frame carry, where of course Mateus owns the world record here with 7 seconds flat. Now, last year he had a score of, or sorry, not a score. He had a time of somewhere around 8.35 seconds, which again is a great performance. But of course, in classic Mateus fashion, he looked rather disappointed with his performance. Now, that's of course due to the fact that he didn't break his world record, but he was still good enough last year to again win this event. Um, and then when you really look into it, last year at the Arnold, he was suffering from sort of knee issues that he sort of sustained while training for one of the events at last year's Arnold's. So, you don't really want to be running up a ramp with 400 kilograms with knee issues. So I definitely think that he is still capable of somewhere within that 7 second range. I do think he was hampered a bit last year. So just based off of that, I do think he's going to be around 7 seconds this year, maybe even faster, breaking his world record. That'd be great to see. And just based off of sort of chances here, I don't see anybody in this competition of having higher chances of breaking that world record than Mateus himself. So due to that, I think he takes the win here. Um, I wouldn't say safely because if we're being honest, this year is extremely competitive. But I do think that he's definitely capable of breaking his world record and taking first place here. Again, as I mentioned, this is really going to separate him out from his competitors, or at least I believe it should separate him out from Hooper, Martins, even Thor. Uh, again, and that's mainly because I have Evan and Maxime here getting in between him and his most forefront competitors here. Moving on from the frame carry to the Denny Stones. I have him here in third place with 9 points. Again, I already sort of talked about this a little bit. There's been a lot of talk recently, at least in the past maybe week, about Mateus's Denny Stone performance or the possibility of a win here for him. There was a picture put up actually by on Krzysztof Radzikowski, a another great Polish strongman, of him at Mateus's I don't even know what you would call it, sort of his gym, I guess. And it was a picture of him and Mateus, and in the background, you saw about two or three Denny Stone replica sort of, pieces of equipment to sort of replicate that. Um, so, there's been a lot of talk about Mateus having a great training leading up to this. There's been a lot of talk about his training performances, by certain people behind the scenes, I guess, that he's been looking exceptional on this event. So just due to all of that talk and just Mateus's track record with sort of these one-off random events, that are hard to predict. I do think that he's gonna have a great performance here. Just speaking of, for example, like last year they had the stone throw, Mateus wins it. They have the stone to shoulder, Mateus wins it. Those kind of events that are hard to predict or out of the ordinary. Mateus is usually he has a bit of a knack for them. So I do think he's gonna have a great performance here. Not necessarily win it because although this is sort of one of those one-off kind of events, there are people that have experience with it. Um, but again, definitely think he is gonna be fighting for a top three, maybe even a win on this event. Now that comes with the caveat that, of course, Hooper or Evan maybe make a mistake, or maybe even Novikov uh, does something that nobody's expecting. Um, Yeah, we'll end up seeing what happens there with Novikov. But anyways, moving on to the Apollon's wheels. I have him here with 8.5 points. As I already discussed, this is a predicted 3 reps on the Apollon's wheels, tied with Martins and just falling short of Hooper and Tom. Because again, I think Hooper and Tom have had sort of the best training, at least put out on social media, for this event. Tom specifically, actually, for most of it, I'm pretty sure Hooper was sort of the favorite, but Tom recently put out a video or some training footage of him hitting, I believe it was competition weight for 4 reps within the time frame. So I think Tom is a pretty safe bet to be fighting for first place on that event, maybe even getting 5 reps, which I do think the event will be won with 4 reps, but if somebody can get 5 reps, I do think that's almost guaranteed to be a flat out win. Um, anyways, so yeah, as I was saying, back to Mateos, I'm here with 8.5 points, getting 3 reps. According to his training footage, he has hit, or well, let me be clear. He's put out training footage of him hitting a 185 kilogram axle for quote unquote reps. So if he's doing a 185 kilogram axle for reps, that implies that it's at least 2 reps. So I definitely think he's capable of 2 reps. Um, scale up the fact that it's slightly heavier than competition weight. Uh, and the training footage also looked pretty good. I definitely think he's capable of 3 reps, maybe even 4, but that would really be begging for a lot here. I think if Matos can sort of do pretty well on the Dinnies like I have here, and if he's able to get 4 reps on the Apollons, I think he's just about locked in for a win. But again, that would be a very, very great performance that he would have to put out there, I guess is what I'll say. Um, I do think he's capable of it, of course, I know. But just being objective, I think 3 reps is sort of what we can expect here. Um, anyways, moving on to the stone medley. I don't think there's really much that has to be said here. Mateus won the trial by stone in the 2020 Arnold Strongman Classic. Mateus won the stone to shoulder in 2018 and 2019 when it was contested. Mateus is full, like by far the best stone to shoulder that we've ever seen, at least on this Oudhaugen tombstone. Uh, so yeah, there's not really much that has to be said here. I think it'd be a shock if he didn't win this event. I think it'd even be a shock if he didn't go out there and do more reps than he has to on the stone. But yeah, essentially, I think he's winning this event with just about no problem. So again, that leaves him off here with 43.5 points, tied on points with Mitchell Hooper, winning um, off of countback for a first place finish here. Sort of just a quick analysis here on these top 4 guys. Just to give a final statement, I think Thor, he was sort of my favorite a couple months back, just due to the fact that I was sort of predicting him based off of his previous performances. Now we do see that he hasn't really been able to get back to where he was on the axle press, although he has made great progress. But I do think it's going to sort of hinder him here in this competition. Now, with that being said, Thor's the kind of guy that he really brings his best on the competition day. Not even for the fact that he peaks as fantastically as Martins and Hooper. I think it's more so he's just a great competitor. He will just bring out the best in himself on that competition day. So who really knows how many reps he's going to do on the Apollon's wheels? Who really knows where he's going to place on any of these events? Realistically, you can say that if Thor comes back in that sort of 2018, 2019 mentality that he had, you can sort of just boost up all of his or some of his scores here by 2 points, 1 or 2 points each. And that would be really enough for a victory here. Um, but again, I have him here in fourth just because I can't really objectively predict that, but it's definitely something to look out for. It's something that he's definitely known for doing. Um, so yeah, that's all I can really say about Thor. Hopefully he does bring a fantastic performance on that day because that would just be something amazing to see. Something to say about Martins that I kind of already commented on is that if anybody kind of takes a misstep or slips up on a certain event, makes a little mistake, Martins will be there to capitalize on that, and they will lose to Martins because Martins is not really the kind of guy that makes mistakes. Barring maybe his last competition in 2022, the Rogue Invitational, but he doesn't really seem to be in that shape right now. He seems to be in a really good shape. So I do think that he will be a very consistent competitor. Um, and I do think that he will win if he brings that consistency and if anybody slips up. Moving on to Mitchell Hooper. Um, what I can really say is that if Hooper brings in his best package of all time, for example, the deadlift, or well, I guess I should say, if he brings in his best package of all time, I think that will really lead him to victory. Because if you look at the deadlift, he could score an extra point. The frame, he could score 4 to 5 extra points. Um, and yeah, I think that's really mm, maybe the stone medley, he could score an extra 2 points. So Hooper definitely has some points that he could im- I guess gain according to these predictions, which would lead him to a victory. However, it's tough to say just due to the fact that we know that his deadlift training has been sort of hindered here. He could end up losing or scoring less points than I have predicted here at the end of the day, or again, much more if he comes in a fantastic shape, which in that case, I do think he would win. Now, just based off of my predictions here, um, again, Matheus winning. I think he will win so long as he definitely does need at least 4 points on the deadlift. I do think that if any of these bottom three guys beat him on the deadlift, it will significantly make this, or it will make it significantly more difficult for him to win the competition. He definitely needs to win the frame carry. He definitely needs a top three in the Denny Stones, maybe even better. I think he definitely needs 3 reps on the Apollo's wheels because I don't think 2 reps will cut it for a win here. And he definitely needs a win on the Stone Medley, although that's a pretty safe win in my opinion. So essentially, again, Mateo's winning, but he's sort of on a very thin wire here. So if things don't really go his way, if he makes one mistake, I don't think that he will win. But that will just remain to be seen at the Arnold Strongman Classic. So with that being said, that is basically the summary of all of my predictions. Sort of yapping here for a very long time, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it somewhat. Hopefully these predictions don't seem so outlandish and they seem, or at least they can be used as sort of a gauge as to where you can sort of expect these athletes to place. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed it and thank you very much for watching.